Welcome to Live with Joan. I'm Joan Ranquet. I'm an animal communicator, author, TEDx speaker, founder of Communication with All Life University, and I take people on wildlife trips. This was supposed to be live, but Facebook isn't letting us on. And so in a moment, I will introduce my guest. But in the meantime, I wanted to let you know about a number of things coming up. One will be the Holistic Horse Conference, which we'll talk about in a second. And also we have upcoming, Claudia, get your dates ready. We have the Death, Dying, and Beyond virtual retreat coming up on, is that February 24th and 25th?
Yes.
And right before that, we always do a little thing in here called May Their Memory Be a Blessing. So stay tuned for that, because that's an online free event that kind of is a little precursor, if you will. And then, of course, we have the Spring Intensive coming up, which is
April 4th through the 12th.
Okay. And we have the, Animal Communication Level 1 starting.
April, 1 second. It just disappeared on me.
April
23rd.
Okay. And then Energy Healing for Animals.
Starting April 24th.
So we have a big spring coming up. We have also animal medical intuition, the energetic horsemanship, and we have a few spots left on the dolphin trip in June, and a few spots for the Tula Tula in South Africa, which is an elephant herd like no other. I mean, these guys practically get in the Jeep and have to smell you and the whole thing. So it's we've got lots of fun things coming up. But in the meantime, in the immediate coming up, and I have to tell you, I've had I'll go into it next week more about a little mini evacuation, what have you, but there was a lot that went on here. And right before all this came up, I had spent a lot of time, actually the between Christmas and New Year's, I'm usually very quiet. Well, I ended up overfilling my fun cup, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am that I did so many fun things, because the last few weeks, I know, have not been fun. They've been interesting, and I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot about myself and how, solid or not solid my plans have been. Actually, they were very solid, just some things I want to improve upon. But so I love that this is coming up, the horse conference, Holistic Horse Conference, because I think it's going to refill the fun cup. So I would like to introduce Dr. Jeff Grognet, who is an amazing, he's been my co-host on this, and he's done a number of other conferences. So Claudia, can you bring, or I guess Jeff, you could just, ta-da!
There we go.
Yeah.
Hello, Joan.
Hello. And I love your shirt.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah. And then what tribe probably created that?
Where these shirts come from, it depends how you want to say it. The English way to say it is quackhoodle.
I have a bunch of, Claudia knows I've got a lot of their art around my house.
Okay.
Although I took it all down when I evacuated. But anyway, it'll
Yeah.
be right back up. Yeah,
Okay.
I have a ton of their art.
Yeah. Their art is, here we go. That's what we're talking about. I call this one my whale shirt, and I've got about 3 different colors on this one. But if you want, looking at tribe, it's called the Quaker or something like that.
Yeah, it's KWAI. And yeah, it starts like that, but yeah.
It does. But but anyway, I'm up in Parksville, British Columbia, which is on Vancouver Island, and this is the territory of that nation. So that's why.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I've had the last 2 months have been working with you very, very intimately in terms of getting all the interviews set up and pulling in. Altogether, we had 23 different speakers.
it was amazing.
Yeah. And so we managed to get this thing together, and the breadth of topics is out of this world.
It really is, and one of many of the people in this group are interested in animal communication and becoming animal communicators. And I always say that, especially if you want to work with horses and you haven't worked with horses up until now, or you haven't had the opportunity to be around horses, this is going to be like, um, you know, freshman and sophomore year.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it, you know,
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of information that you can gather that gives you a background in horses. Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
and that's the key. This is like I mean, I'm a veterinarian, and we had people going through vet school who were, learning about horses, but they didn't have any prior experience. Now I did, thankfully, but the people that didn't have any experience, it's kind of like if you're a horse person and you have somebody that sort of comes along to see your horse, you've got your eye out for them saying, okay, where are you going? What are you doing? Like all these things to try and just protect themselves, right?
yeah,
And that's sort of the base knowledge that you need. But in the case of the conference, I mean, we're not doing practical stuff like that, but we are talking, getting the nomenclature in, and people can sort of listen to something and say, oh, like for example, this is a medical thing, horses with heaves or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or whatever it's called these days, right?
right.
This is the new stuff that's going on, the new thinking, which is so valuable for someone in animal communication because it gives them a basis for something to think about.
Yeah, and that we have everything from body workers to trainers to Mustang people to nutrition, a ton on nutrition,
Yeah,
longevity.
that's
Um, what I mean, I learned a lot about omega 6s that had never occurred to me with Dr. Penny and Wendy. Like
yeah,
I've always been like, oh, omega 6, bleh. But now I get the balance with the horse. And that
yeah,
was really, really, really good. I mean, all of them are great.
yeah, yeah. No, there's some that really the thing one I really liked was getting into, and we had two speakers that talked about I'll call them wild horses, right?
Yeah,
And from two aspects. One was sort of the messages that wild horses are trying to give us. So if you're into animal communication, bingo, that is going to be a real strong one for you to make sure you catch. And that is their quality of communication is very different from the average horse,
right.
right? And what they tell you and what's going on. And then the other side is, I call it the plight of the Mustangs, as in how the political decisions are messing them up.
Yeah. And we had art. We brought in um,
Yeah, that's right.
Carol Walker, who's a photographer of wild horses. And we had Lisa Dearson, who is the head of the, Claudia, what is she the head of? It's the Equus.
Film and arts.
Yes, thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
the Equus Film Festival is what she's
Yeah,
doing.
but also it includes literature and and yeah, includes literature.
Yeah,
So
literature, art, and a lot of I'll call them movies or shorts or whatever. Yeah, but she's talking equine storytelling is sort of her umbrella term for all that stuff. Yeah,
Claudia and I saw a really powerful, compelling film at the Rocky Mountain Horse Expo last. Um,
March.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Uh,
yeah, Yeah, no, they just the things that they were bringing up, and the I think the interesting thing you talked about omega sixes, omega threes, those are fatty acids, and that was Penny and Wendy, and what they talked about was when a horse should eat fish.
Yeah.
That's how they termed it, because fish oil is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And getting that balance of omega sixes to omega threes is critical for health. But a lot of people sort of have heard about it, but they don't know how to implement it.
Well, and the other thing is that we think omega sixes are the great inflammation causer, and
Mhm.
that omega three is the one that saves the day. But the truth is, there does need to be a bit of balance, like with everything.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll tell you, as a result of this, and by chance, one of the guests, Lola Michelin from the Northwest School of Animal Massage, I can't. We either just interviewed her or not. Anyway, she came and stayed here and taught massage for 2 days, and over dinners we talked. I talked about some of the other speakers and the latest findings in food and foraging and what have you. And she had told me about a feed that was she had been using that was only this much. You're feeding this much, but it was like all the haze, and it's wild something. And literally, it has changed. Now it's not cheap, but it also you're feeding that much, and it has changed my horse's coats. I mean, it's everything. So it was like the combination of learning and having a really delicious conversation, with one of the guests. And yeah, I love what I've learned from this, and I love what I get to do with this. Yeah. And then Lockie Phillips he was quite fascinating with his taking the emotion of horses.
Yeah. 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 He was trying to dovetail that into the whole training scenario, right? And that way you can sort of back up from it and go, okay. And we had I had a few speakers that kind of went on that theme, and that is the old way, I call them the old way of training horses and such, is just not cutting it these days if you really want looking after the welfare of the horse.
Yeah. And that was, hold on.
Okay. But Lockie, he was it was really quite neat how he looked at it, and that is what is the horse what does the horse really want, and how can you meet those needs and such. And but the thing is he did it from a very scientific perspective.
Yeah. And my second book, Energy Healing for Animals published by Sounds True.
Hmm.
And my third book, EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, published by Findhorn. Both of them, we both are quoting the same guy. And in that, it's like simplifying on the one hand the emotions, but looking at the complexity within that simplicity, which is so much richer than being like, oh, they regret this. It's like, no, horses don't regret. They definitely live within the confines of these big feelings. We could add maybe a few more, but those feelings are so profound, and those feelings drive them.
Hmm.
It's like if you're either in fight or flight or in rest and digest, and some of those feelings are going to be fight or flight, and some are going to be rest and digest. And for me, and it's what I talk about all the time, it's like we need that emotional safety, and he really, 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 really
Yeah.
brought that home.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thrust in this was I call the emotional part of a horse, and that is one of the things that came up probably about three, probably four speakers was horses have to move.
Yes. Oh my
And
God.
Yeah. And so we were sorting out the diet. We had lots of background on diet, as in what is the right diet for a horse and what's the differences between that A and that A, for example.
And that was pretty well, everybody was pretty in alignment on that too.
Very much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. But the motion thing, and that is even if you have even if you've only got 2 acres, there's ways for you to construct a system so that the horses have to move or want to move.
that's what I have. I'm on 3.5 acres. Most of it is hills. And I've created a track system so that they have to come up the hill for water. They go down the hill for lunch. Like they're moving.
Yeah. Yeah. And the point is, and the one of the things that really hit home with me, every day you need to exercise the big muscles.
Yeah,
I really like that quote, and that is, it's not just a case of ambling to the feeder and then back and forth.
right.
That's similar to, as I call it, letting a dog out in a backyard thinking they're getting their exercise,
Exactly.
right?
It's the same thing.
And thing is, you've got to get them moving and doing more, and that is healthier for them from health, but also healthier from the emotional standpoint that, hey, I've moved, I've done my thing. And that was a stimulus for me to get my butt out and get doing something outside every day too.
Yeah, normally I am, but I've had to be quiet because of this lingering cough from the flu 2 weeks ago.
You've had your own challenges over the last month, Joan.
Oh my God. I think it's award winning, but you know what? I'm ready for a different award.
Okay.
Um,
But the one fun thing I had was interviewing this person called Joan Ranquet.
hmm,
And the a lot of people don't know this. The thing that got Joan into, I mean, she was already into horses, but the thing that really got her into horses was when she won one at a raffle.
yeah.
That's my favorite story.
Yeah, that story is in the interview that I did with Joan, and that is what propelled her to where she is today.
Yeah.
The
It,
but
it,
make sure you listen to that interview to find out all the background on Joan and what created her in this life of animal communication these days.
yeah, it's all horses. I mean, as much as I love dogs and cats, it's definitely all horses.
Yeah.
And then we share. We you won a saddle.
Yeah, that was when I when I was a kid, and it was so funny. It was a sad what do they call that? Saddle Club dance is what it was
Mm,
called. So and there's tons of kids there, and I was a kid, right? And then they had this saddle that they were raffling off. What it was is someone gave them a saddle, and they just raffled it off, and yeah, and so I got this Mexican saddle.
funny.
And it was kind of like, okay, what do I do with this? Well, I already had at that point a pony, and then I graduated to a horse when I got bigger. But it actually fit my horse later. And and the Mexican saddles have this horn that's about that big,
Yeah,
you know, and it's actually, I mean, it was a nice saddle and all that, but it really wasn't comfortable. I had to put a pad on it to make it so that it worked for me. But
they don't look comfortable.
well, it doesn't look comfortable, and then it's not comfortable for me. It wasn't comfortable,
That's
and it
funny.
also didn't fit my horse very well. He was too narrow, and so yeah, that's the way it was. But that was way back. I call it my teen years when I was competing with horses. And then the thing that really topped it all off, because I had all that experience with horses, riding them and such, that helped me in vet school tremendously. But the other side is just after I graduated, I went on a 2 week horse packing trek. And if anyone knows British Columbia, Canada, there's a huge wilderness park up north called Spatsizi, and we were above 6,000 feet the whole time, riding the horses, and it was just 5 of us. There's 4 of us and a guide that we had who was Indian, who'd been there 30 years before. That's what we were depending on. And
Wow.
and yeah, one day we did get lost, and all he knew is we have to be on that side of that mountain to be able to be on the right side of the river. That's how it works. So we were using game trails and the whole bit, but it was fantastic, what we were doing. But that's where you get a bonded with a horse, as in, yeah, this horse is the kid that's going to pull me through this. You
I
get
did, yeah, I did a pack trip um, on the eastern side of Washington, which would be the same in British Columbia. So drier. Um, yeah, and I was about 12, maybe 13. But yeah, week out in the wilderness on horse. There's
yeah.
nothing like it.
Yeah, no, it was just beautiful, and you really realize how much the horses are doing for you on those tracks.
Oh my God. And my horse was white, and I have a white guy now who is my trail horse. And we will now refer to him as Captain Evacuation because he was the best one. When I
Right.
did to jump in the trailer, he was like, anyway,
Yeah, it's nice when they follow the lead, isn't it?
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Drakkar, my other guy who thinks he's boss, is looking at him in a whole new light.
Yeah. No, but anyway, with your background, the communication, we had a number of communicators going into different themes, right? And part of it was, and I like this one with April Love. It was horses are talking. Are you listening?
Yeah,
And it's a case of and this wasn't just communication. What it was realizing what horses are telling us by their body movements, how they're looking at you, what they're doing. So you don't need to have a
performing.
communication thing. It's just being observant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that really made a difference that way. And then the we had the like I say nutrition was a huge one because we had someone who talked about equine ulcers.
Yeah. And
And
that is more, they say that every horse that's ridden, basically, because of the way that the hyaluronic acid is and what have you, and how it kind of shuts down the minute the saddle goes on, that it is more common than people know.
oh yeah, yeah. That's the thing. I mean, this is where I date myself a little bit, but that really wasn't talked about when I went through vet school, which was I graduated in 83. Okay. And then it was 10 years later, gee, all these horses have got ulcers. Well, where did that come from? Well, they invented this thing called a scope. So they were going down and having a look at their stomachs, putting it up the nose and down. And it was like, oh, that's how we know what's. And
Right.
all of a sudden, I got diagnosing these things, and it's like they're in three-quarters of the horses.
Yeah.
And then you
But
start thinking, what are we doing wrong? That's where it came down to, you know.
well, and it's interesting too because a majority sometimes if I just get a good cough, I can go for a while. um, a lot of the way in which these people, our guests, talked about feeding is almost like a natural preventative for that. But
Yeah.
what we talk in many of them about how one would ulcers. But if you look at like uh, what happens in a barn is it's limited how much feeding, how much movement, and those are kind of two giant topics. And for a lot of people, it is out of their control because their barn manager or their trainer, has told them this is how it goes. So I think the beauty of this conference also is it's going to empower people that are in those barn settings because I know I used to come in with my supplement bags back in the I mean, early 90s, like, I need this and this and this fed. And they'd be like, nope. And I'd be like, no, I need this fed. And the more that, you, as long as you're, and I always said, no, I need this fed with a smile. The more that you trust yourself, trust your intuition, and move forward, and really ask in a way that is, they have to say yes, and yet you're polite. You will be respected. And in the end, the same barn managers were coming to me with questions, but because they'd see the difference between my horse and the other horses in the barn. But you do have to, absolutely know. You can't just be like, I think this is a great idea. Oh, my thing always does that thumbs up. But see, that's the universe saying yes. You have to know a few things.
Yeah.
And that requires research. And in many ways, this conference has shortened your research for you.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of information, but what it's going to do for a lot of people is just empower them.
Yeah.
And hey, and the thing is, this isn't going to be the answer to everything, but what it is, it's an alleyway for you to get learning on something. And so if it tickles your fancy, it's like, yeah, I really want to get into the omega-6s, omega-3s. Okay.
Right. Or I want to be training.
Or I've got a horse and it's got leaky gut. But that opens up the question, what's leaky gut? How did it get there? What's it doing? I mean, there's a big amount on leaky gut. But the thing is, there's ways to help it out. And I saw this with my clients all the time, and that is if they had got just a little tiny bit of information, and then they think, oh, I know everything I need, they fall on their face.
Yeah.
But if they're really into it and they go into, there's a reason I want you to feed this certain food, this certain supplement, or whatever it is. And that way you can actually tell, in your case, the barn manager, as you're talking about, or your veterinarian.
Yeah.
And that is, hey, I really like to get into investigating this supplement. What do you think? And if the vet just says, well, I've never heard of it, so I wouldn't use it, and that's the end of the story, that's quite often a breaker right there. But if you have more knowledge and you're able to say, well, what it does is this, this, and this, bingo. Then you can have intelligent conversation.
I remember in about 2000, I was in a barn in Denver, and I've been a distributor for Dynamite for years. And at that point, my vet had said, and I had taken my horses off the vitamins because I didn't necessarily see what was going on. And so my vet had suggested I do this iron supplement, Red Cell. And I said, all right. And he knew what I did for a living, and he actually had seen some pretty crazy things with me. And he was very Western medicine oriented, but boy, did he end up sending me a lot of clients. But so here's how this went. I said, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to go back to the supplement. I know we've run the blood today. We'll just run it again in 6 weeks. And then if we don't see an improvement, I'll try your way.
Yeah.
And he ended up seeing such an improvement. He sent people to me for vitamins. But, that is another way of doing it, is working with your vet and just saying, I believe in this. I'll go your way if in 6 weeks or 3 months we don't see a change. But the change was so dramatic.
Yeah. And that's the key. That's called a scientific study.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when you're dealing with vets or barn managers or trainers, that has validity.
Yeah, that's actually how I like to do things. In fact, when I first started doing energy healing, even, I always ask people to get a baseline of the blood work, especially like with things like kidney disease and liver disease, right? Like I'm all about having a baseline, and I'm glad they feel better, but let's prove that this is working, because that is the name of the game, is the blood work and the science.
That's right.
Proving energy at this point. We know it works, but it's like, to get others along, having these measurements is everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's the best way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, the thing is, this conference, there's such an array of different topics. So even if your interest is narrow, you're going to find something you're going to turn you around.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
you,
And
excuse me, you've been doing conferences now for a while. What, you and your wife had a practice that you sold a few years back, and then
yeah, I practiced for in as a veterinarian full time for altogether 39 years. And so my wife, who is my partner at the vet hospital, we practiced together for 26 years.
wow, that's so great.
Yeah. And we're still married. So there you go. It
And
works.
I got
And
to meet her the other day
that's
on
right.
Zoom.
That's right. But anyway, the point is that we went through our evolution, and that is, I was trained as a conventional vet. Period. That's especially back in '83. That's all you learn as a veterinarian, and that is, oh, diagnose a disease. This is the medication for it. Bingo. That's what you're doing. Nutrition was, as I say it, the poorest thing. In dog and cat nutrition, we got an hour. In cattle and pig and chickens, we got a fair bit more, because that's an economic species, and you want to be able to feed them for the lowest cost for the best gain. And unfortunately, horses were kind of pushed into that mold back,
Yeah.
and that is, what's the cheapest way to feed the horse to meet their requirements? And that's the same thing that with commercial dog or cat food, and that is, you're trying to find out what's the cheapest way you can do it so that they can survive, but it doesn't mean that they're going to thrive. And I think the thing about the equine ulcers was right along that line, and that is, gee, I think we can do better, and prevent that. But the key is, the knowledge has been changing all the time. And there's two things. You have to keep up with the knowledge, but you also have to be able to keep your eyes and ears open for alternatives. And that is, gee, this is the way it's been done for decades and it's worked. That's the emphasis behind it. But gee, this other way is a different way, and these people are seeing better results. So rather than saying, well, it's too far out on a limb and there's not enough proof for it, it's more a case of, gee, maybe that will work. And you have to look at common sense and put that into there and make your decisions based on that.
And so, how long ago did you sell your practice?
It was in 2021 that we sold the practice. So I guess it's coming 3.5 years ago now. And yeah, and since then I've moved. I've been educating for, yeah, about 35 years.
Which is quite clear. You're very great at it.
Yeah, I like doing it. But I decided, okay, I'm really moving into the full education. That's when I started doing the conferences. The horse conference was my 10th one. My 11th one is coming up, herbs and homeopathy.
I love that.
So, and then I've got more planned. So I'm going to have the full calendar this year, so, but the key is, it's a great way for people to learn and be exposed to it. And this is the key. They can
Yeah.
take better care of the animals that they work with and they love. That's it.
And everybody wants to do the best thing. It's just they often don't know the best thing.
Yeah.
So, in order to do the best thing, continuing to educate yourself. I mean, I'm a junkie for learning more. And that's why I love doing this too. It's like I kept telling Claudia every day, I'm like, oh my God, I'm learning so much. I mean, I take notes.
Yeah. And that's the key. I mean, if someone like, I mean, you've been in horses all your life, literally,
Yeah,
right? And you're working with horses all the time
I've got four.
in your way, right? And yet you're learning,
Yeah, I'm always learning.
you know. So yeah, you've got to be pretty well blind if you're not learning this stuff as you go along.
Well, and we are always, as human beings, and I mean, sometimes we do it elegantly, and then sometimes we're forced to. Like, I feel like the last, since about 2000, I mean, 2020, we've been in a kind of hyper go forward, like Star Wars, like, vroom.
Yeah,
We have to stay alert, aware, evolve, and learn. And
that's it. Yeah, sticking with the old paradigm, where you and this is the thing. I've got a whole lot of books from like 1890s on how to feed horses, how to feed dogs. You should read that and you go, oh boy, and the way they were writing it was kind of like I call it the fad diets you'll see on the top on the front of National Enquirer or something these days.
right.
And so you sort of read it and think, wow, things have changed so much, and the, uh, the old ways weren't necessarily better,
No,
you know.
no.
And
And
the, the other, I mean, it's similarly in terms of welfare, and this is really funny because I think it was 2 nights ago, my wife and I were watching an old movie with a guy called John Wayne. Remember him?
oh, yeah,
Yeah, and they had these horses. It was a battle of in I call it Mexico. It was the whole Mexico U.S. Thing when they finally broke it up and did their thing, right? And they had these horses running. Then all of a sudden, that literally the horse is doing a somersault and the guy's going flying, right? And you look at that and think, yeah, they that wasn't staged with the film. That was for real
yeah.
you know. And ironically, I've got a vet friend is actually a classmate of my wife's, because she went through vet school, finished in 91. But anyway, Marianne is her name. She's a veterinarian, but now she does the humane stuff on movies. So when you see that thing at the very end that says no animals were harmed in the making of this movie,
Right.
she's the one that signed off on it. And
Yeah,
this is the key. She has the power, I mean, lowly her, to stop production right now.
yeah.
Okay. That's how things have changed. And so we've got all this stuff that's happening and her big thing is horses. She grew up with horses and the whole bit, and she taught equine medicine and surgery at the vet colleges, right? And then she went into this thing where she's just watching the production on animals,
But that's amazing.
But that's it. But so that's the power that's happened.
Yeah,
And so we need to piggyback on that power and say, okay, how can we make our
true.
lives of our horses better?
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like every day I wake up and say that about all the dogs and cats lying around in here and the horses out that window.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much more we can do to make them better because we're in control of everything that they get.
Yeah, we are I was telling Claudia because it snowed where she is, and I had a dog, Olivia, that when I would open the door in the morning when I lived up in Carnation outside of Seattle, when I would open the door and it was full of snow and she hadn't seen the snow the night before, she looked at me like I brought the snow, right? Like that's how much they think we do. So like, oh my God, you brought me more snow. So it's that's who they think we are. And so we have to show up like that. I'll bring
Yeah.
you snow.
We had our first dog. She didn't see snow for her first couple of years. And then it snowed overnight, and that's right. We got 3 feet of snow overnight.
That's what would happen in
I
carnation.
mean, I woke up in the morning and looked out at the deck and I thought, holy moly, who did that to me? And it's just, boom, like everything's paralyzed. And well, we had to have fun with that. So her name was Courtney. I got her revved up. Hey, Court, you want to go out? You ready to go out? Do you want to go out and pee? And then I opened the door and she was just running and all of a sudden she just put the brakes on and slid into this snowbank
Oh, that's so great.
and then came back in not knowing what to do, right? And I said, okay, you can stay here for a while, and we'll try it again in another hour. And then we went out, and she's just putting her feet so gently into the snow, like what is this? And then by later on that day, it's party time.
Yeah, yeah. Olivia had grown up in snow in Colorado, and then when I was still married, we'd moved to Florida, so there was no snow. Although now there's snow in Florida, but we were South Florida. So then we learned about the beach. But then when I moved to Seattle, we had both beach and snow.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. But anyway, yeah, the thing is we're in control of everything that our dogs, cats, horses get. Right.
yeah,
And so we have to take that role seriously and not let it get defaulted to the I mean, not that they're bad people, but we should be making the decisions and not the trainers or the vets or anything.
right, absolutely. And that,
We can take their advisements, but we should be making the decisions on what they really want to do.
yeah, it's like taking it all in and saying, this is what I know is best for my horse.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a recent thing with my horse's feet. My barefoot farrier had been out of town because he'd had a tragedy. And so he hadn't gotten to my horse's feet. So my trainer had come while I was on my wildlife trip. And she said, oh, your horses, the ground is too hard on the track. And your new horse should be out on the sand and blah, 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 blah. Well, my barefoot farrier came and said, wow, your horse's feet are so great because of your track. And I'm like, that's the voice I'm going to trust. I mean, that
Yeah.
is, I mean, I love my trainer, but she's just got a different idea than me. And I think the more that we become aware that, like, this is my idea, this is her idea, she's coming from a good place. But then here's the farrier, here's his ideas. He's the authority on this thing. I already feel this way. This is more in alignment then with how I'm going to proceed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've had I say an evolution, and here's the correlation for you. Dogs.
Yeah.
In the 70s, it was just a dog. In the 80s, then we had the monks of New Skeet started this whole thing
Right.
of dominance. And all of a sudden, we had this relationship change, as in we have to be dominant to the dog and take control and all this stuff. And then it was, hold it. The dominance thing isn't working. And so then we moved into hierarchies. But the point is, now we're looking at dogs going, okay, what is the easiest way to work with behavior problems? Because that's one of the things I do. I've got a behavior course on that too. And that is, how can we make it so that we're actually driving them with what they want to do?
Exactly.
So that's that part. Now that's dogs, and that's the evolution we've come through. When you think of horses, we're only just starting down this journey.
No, I know. In the Olympics this last year, really, like, I don't know if you know, but there was controversy with one of the most favorite people on the planet. And in many ways, I still find her to be, I don't condone what she did, but so appealing as a horse person that I'm hoping for her evolution to bring a lot of people forward because she is that kind of a compelling person. But in the meantime, I just got the low battery thing. In the meantime, it is brought up. I mean, our timing couldn't be more perfect for this because it has brought up everything and what at the end of the day, what it is with most trainers, with most of us horse people, is that all the things that we've done, and you and I have kind of talked about this, we learned. And now we're just kind of unlearning this and moving with evolution.
Yeah.
But it's unlearning those 70s techniques of getting your horse in the trailer. Unlearning a few things. Although, you know, when I'm in an evacuation, I just sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and it still was very gentle, but it, you know, I thought about it. I thought, wow, this is so different than how we would have done it, you know, 30, 40 years ago, even 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, when I was taught, if you have trouble getting him in the trailer, you get someone else on the other side, you lock arms and you push him.
Yeah.
Or if that doesn't work, then you use the ropes.
Yeah, the ropes.
You know?
The one thing though that like we did have to do that. Claudia and I helped evacuate the Gentle Barn in 2019, and that was no small task, right, Claudia?
No, that was no small task. And some of the animals, especially the two heaviest in the
Pig.
species, we were unable to load up. They just
We
it
got
wasn't
one
happening.
in. We
Yeah.
got one in, and it ended up on CNN.
Yes.
It was my debut on the news.
Well, and yes, I'd like to say that my behind was right next to Anderson Cooper on the news. there was there was a, there was a picture, and it was and it was with Stanley,
Yeah.
a sheep. But yes, it was also pretty powerful to watch, because I've seen, growing up in South America, there is still way behind in the way horses are treated. And as the two of you were speaking right now, I remember there's this festival every year on Christmas Day that is a parade of horses, people riding horses down the street, and there's a lot of alcohol involved. And I do not like this festival. And at the end of the thing, a lot of people under the influence are trying to load horses back in trailers. And it was one of the most heart-wrenching things for me to witness. And let's just say there were a lot of F-bombs on my part to those people trying to get those horses in the trailers with not just ropes, but whips. And so seeing the Gentle Barn evacuate animals in such a different.
Yeah, and I mean we did have to lock arms and do some things to get a herd of sheep in, but there weren't whips, there was no
No.
things, there weren't ropes, there weren't, you know, we did it with manpower.
And gentleness and intention.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what you're going to see like in this horse conference. It's just the attitude of how we should be working with horses really came through.
Yeah, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, so I think people are really going to enjoy this conference and enjoy getting to the people that are here in my world are going to enjoy getting to know Dr. Jeff. And yeah, I think I really encourage people to sign up and even do the premium package, because at that point, then you don't have to worry if you miss the conference on Friday. You can just download it and use it like an audiobook.
Which
Yeah.
is what I'll be doing. I am, as a person who has been a horse girl in her heart, but never really got the opportunity to have horses. And I am going to try and live that dream in the very near future. I am very excited about this conference because Joan actually said to me, you have to sign up for this conference because the knowledge that you're going to attain is priceless. So I'm very, very excited for this conference. And I will post the link to the conference in the post.
Ta-da!
Sounds great. Okay. Yeah. No, the thing is, don't miss this one if you've got a horse.
Yeah. And if
That's
you
the
don't have
key.
a horse and you want to work with horses,
there's so much here, and it's so
Yeah,
much for anyone who's a horse owner or anyone who's working with horses in any way at all. You know, it's
yeah,
can learn much. And it was a great pleasure working with this woman called Joan, as in I mean Joan has come to my conferences before, so I know how to work with Joan, but having her as a co-host and helping out and setting all this up, it was just a pleasure.
it
And
was so fun. Yeah,
it was great.
yeah,
And the main thing is we learned something, and anyone who's attending this is going to learn tons.
yeah,
Okay. So
very,
make sure you sign up, get in there. And unless you can watch 3 hours every day for 6 days, I would probably look at getting the package, because if you get the big package, then you've got two courses from me, a course from Joan, far cheaper than anything you could ever get.
yes.
So there you go. Okay.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome, Joan. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.